A very good afternoon to you. This is Silvana Pavlovska and In Focus with Silvana Pavlovska. Today is the 30th of January, 2025. Recently, we talked about the PRESPA agreement and we gave you information related to what was actually happening back in 2018 and how it came that the country, which has always been known as Macedonia and its people as Macedonian, the name of this country was changed. It was changed not because the people themselves wanted it. The Macedonian people definitely didn't want it and they voted against it. But there were other things happening in the background. And so today we're going to reveal to you some other information which is of significance because we do need to understand what actually happened behind the scenes. Who were the players? How could it be that a country and its people are made, or perhaps use a stronger word like forced, to change the name of their country and their identity? That's certainly a wishful thinking on the part of some of the countries surrounding Macedonia. Hopefully, it'll never come to that. So today I'm going to share 3 articles that we referred to in our recent YouTube video in Focus with Silvana Pavlovska. And I ask you to be patient with me, please. These are articles, newspaper articles that were published back in 2018. And just a reminder, those of you who haven't heard this program before, this program is broadcast from Melbourne, Australia. And my name is Silvana Pavlovska. I am an independent journalist, and my passion is investigative journalism. So we will start based on the date of the publication. So the first article refers to July the 16th, 2018. So July 16, 2018, reported by Saska Cvetkovska. And it says, Russian businessmen behind unrest in Macedonia. Investigation. A Russian billionaire living in Greece has given hundreds of thousands of euros to Macedonian opponents of the country's proposed name change. The recipients include football hooligans who have routed in the capital. The family and associates of Azerbaijani strongman Ilham Aliyev acquired UK real estate worth hundreds of millions of dollars. As they still holding on to their property, or are they, I should say, are they still holding on to their property empire? Despite new transparency reforms, there's no way for the public to know because of the special treatment afforded to offshore trusts. Macedonia's prime minister has accused, in quotation, Greek businessmen sympathetic to Russia's interest of fomenting unrest in the country over its proposed name change, which, if it goes forward, will finally enable to join NATO. Now, Interior Ministry documents seen by the Investigative Reporting Lab, Macedonia, a partner of the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, OCCRP, reveal the source of at least some of the payments. At least 300,000 euros were given to opponents of the renaming of Ivan Savidi, a Russian billionaire living in Greece, who was formerly a member of the Russian parliament. These payments were made to over a dozen Macedonian politicians from various parties, members of recently funded radical nationalist organizations, and soccer hooligans from the Vardar Club, who participated in recent riots. For nearly 30 years, Macedonia's formal name, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, the article says, or Fyrom as it was known, has been at the heart of a diplomatic rift between the country and its neighbor, Greece. Athens opposed the name, fearing that it suggested that Macedonia has designs on Greece's northern province, which is also called Macedonia. The dispute was so serious that it prevented Macedonia from joining the NATO alliance due to Greece's instant objections. Just a reminder, this article was published on July the 16th, 2018. Continuing on. Russian businessmen behind the unrest in Macedonia is the name of the article. The tables turned last month when the two countries agreed that the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia would now go by the name Northern Macedonia. The agreement ended the long-standing dispute and opened the door for Macedonia to join NATO. Indeed, shortly afterwards, NATO issued Macedonia a formal invitation to join the alliance. Macedonia's parliament has ratified the agreement, but President George Ivanov has twice refused to sign the law. The government hopes to get the new name approved in a public referendum at the end of September. An affirmative vote by parliament would then also be needed. Meanwhile, nationalist opponents of Macedonia's new name have taken to the streets. On the day after Macedonia signed the agreement with Greece, protesters chanted "Macedonia for Macedonia" on the streets of the capital Skopje. A crowd of about 1,500 demanded that pro-Western Prime Minister Zoran Zaev step down. A Molotov cocktail was thrown at the parliament building but caused no damage. 26 people were arrested. Now, reporters have found at least 300,000 euros were paid to Macedonian opponents of the new name by Ivan Savidi, a Georgian-born billionaire who now lives in Greece, but has spent most of his life in Russia and was once a member of the country's parliament as a member of the ruling United Russia Party. Moscow opposes NATO expansion and has used various forms of soft power to prevent Eastern Europe nations from joining the alliance. Russia has also been involved in protests in Greece over Macedonia's name change, and last week Greece announced that it had expelled 2 Russian diplomats for paying opponents of the name deal and encouraging rallies against it. It also banned 2 other Russian diplomats from entering the country. Moscow has denied the claims and condemned Athens' move as unfounded. Heather Nauert, the US State Department spokeswoman, tweeted that the US is supporting Greece in defending its sovereignty. Quotation, "Russia must end its destabilizing behavior," the tweet said. Riot police face off against protesters in the center of Skopje, capital of the Republic of Macedonia. Credit is mentioned here to Robert Atanasovsky. The Georgia-born Savidi, also known as Savidis, made his fortune in the privatization of what would become Russia's largest tobacco company. He is one of Russia's wealthiest businessmen, with an estimated wealth of $2 billion US. After moving to Greece in the mid-2000s, he purchased the PAOK football club and various media outlets, and his business empire now dominates the country's second city of Thessaloniki, says the article published on July the 16th, 2018, reported by Saska Cvetkovska, titled Russian Businessman Behind Unrest in Macedonia. And you are listening to In Focus with Silvana Pavlovska. Documents seen by reporters show that Savidi transferred the funds to Macedonia in a series of payments. Some of these were made in cash and carried over the Greek border by hand. Other methods were also used. Police sources who asked to remain anonymous say an investigation of the transfer is ongoing, along with a separate investigation of businesses who may be undermining the peace and security of the region. Reporters for the Investigative Reporting Lab confirmed the businessmen's transfers with some of the recipients and with financial institutions. The recipients who confirmed the transfers were a group of football hooligans or soccer hooligans associated with the committee, a fan club of the Vardar soccer team or soccer, team. The same men had taken part in the violent protests in Skopje and then were arrested. 10 were arrested. One of the participating hooligans confirmed to reporters that the group had received cash from Savidi. The documents also show that some members of the group disagreed with receiving the payments. In other words, they didn't accept that they had received any payments. They denied it. The committee is well known for its ties to politics, especially the ousted Vremrodopemene party, and it has been used in the past to initiate political violence. The Vardar football club is owned by the Russian millionaire Sergei Samsonenko, who, like Savidi, lived in the Russian city of Rostov. He now lives in Skopje and is Russia's honorary consul in the Macedonian city of Bitola. Committee's former leader, Alexander Zhuti-Kolevsky, was denied entry into Greece this weekend as a persona non grata because he posed a, quote, danger for the public peace and security, internal security, as well as the international relations of Greece. End of quote, according to Greek documents obtained by the Investigative Reporting Lab. Contacted by reporters, Kolevsky said, I am no security threat. All I do is out of love for the country. I haven't received any money. I am a pure fan of Vardar, Vardar being the soccer club. Savidi did not respond to reporters' questions by the time of publication. The police investigation is ongoing. At the end of this article, it also states BuzzFeed contributed reporting to this story. That was the first article. Okay. From Saska Cvetkovska, published July the 16th, 2018. Next date is the 18th of June. New York Times published this on the 18th of June, 2018. It's titled, In the Balkans, Attempts to Stabilize Europe, written by George Soros and Alexander Soros. Alexander is his son. The authors are leading officers of the Open Society Foundations, it says, which work to advance justice, democratic practice, and human rights around the world. The flags of Macedonia and Greece along the shore of the Lake Prespania Oteshevo in the Republic of Macedonia on Sunday. It has taken almost 25 years to get an agreement between the governments in Athens and Skopje on what to call the entity once known as the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. It would be a mistake to dismiss this as a minor development, particularly now when the unity of the transatlantic alliance is at its lowest point since World War II, and the unity of the European Union is under challenge in every national election. In fact, the historic compromise to rename the country the Republic of Northern Macedonia, thus softening a rivalry over national histories, opens a window of opportunity for leaders in Europe and the United States to defy current trends and begin shaping a secure future for the Balkans, an achievement that would help secure stability for all of Europe. The hard-won agreement on Macedonia could still be undermined. The region is known for its tragic history. It's where World War I began, and it is the site of the bloodiest conflict in Europe since World War II, since the violent disintegration of Yugoslavia. However, the region's prospects have brightened as states have moved toward European Union and NATO membership. Slovenia and Croatia are already in the European Union. Montenegro and Serbia are candidates. Albania can follow, as can Northern Macedonia, now that the naming dispute has been resolved. This article was written by George Soros and Alexander Soros, titled In the Balkans, A Chance to Stabilize Europe, published by the New York Times on the 18th of June, 2018. Let's hear a little bit of music, and then we'll come back to the other article. You're listening to In Focus with Silvana Pavlovska, broadcasting from Melbourne, Australia. Today is the 30th of January, 2025. We are talking about events that occurred prior to the changing of the name of Macedonia. And we shared with you a couple of articles. The Russian Businessman Behind Unrest in Macedonia by Saska Cvetkovska, published on July the 16th, 2018. And the other one was the New York Times, 18th of the 6th, 2018, titled In the Balkans, A Chance to Stabilize Europe, written by George Soros and Alexander Soros. Now, this last article I wish to share with you today is a statement of A. Wess Mitchell, Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, U.S. Strategy towards the Russian Federation. Tuesday, August the 21st, 2018. This is a bit of a lengthy article, so please bear with me whilst I go through it with you and for you. Chairman Corker, Ranking Member Menendez, thank you for inviting me to testify today. I will use my prepared comments to outline in brief form the overarching strategy of the United States towards the Russian Federation. The foundation for this strategy is provided by 3 documents, as directed and approved by the President: the National Security Strategy, the National Defense Strategy, and the Russia Integrated Strategy. The starting point of the National Security Strategy is the recognition that America has entered a period of big power competition, and that past US policies have neither sufficiently grasped the scope of this emerging trend, nor adequately equipped our nation to succeed in it. Contrary to the hopeful assumptions of previous administrations, Russia and China are serious competitors that are building up the material and ideological wherewithal to contest US primacy and leadership in the 21st century. It continues to be among the foremost national security interests of the United States to prevent the domination of the Eurasian landmass by hostile powers. The central aim of the administration's foreign policy is to prepare our nation to confront this challenge by systematically strengthening the military, economic, and political fundaments of American power. Our Russia policy proceeds from the recognition that to be effective, US diplomacy toward Russia must be backed by military power that is second to none and fully integrated with our allies and all of our instruments of power. To this end, the administration has reversed years of cuts to the US defense budget, begun the process of recapitalizing the US nuclear arsenal, requested close to $11 billion to support the European Deterrence Initiative, and in the past year and a half, worked with NATO allies to bring about the largest European defense spending increase since the Cold War, a total of more than $40 billion to date. In addition to commitments from over half of the alliance to meet NATO's 2% defense spending requirement by 2024, the United States achieved virtually all of our policy objectives at the NATO summit, including the establishment of 2 new NATO commands, including one here in the United States, the establishment of new counter-hybrid threat response teams, and major multi-year initiatives to bolster the mobility, readiness, and capability of the alliance. In tandem, we have worked to degrade Russia's ability to conduct aggression by imposing costs on the Russian state and the oligarchy that sustains it. Building on Secretary Pompeo's recent testimony, I'm submitting for the record a detailed list of actions this administration has taken. These include, to date, 217 individuals and entities sanctioned, 6 diplomatic and consular facilities closed or kept closed, and 60 spies removed from US soil. The State Department has played the lead role in ensuring that these efforts are closely and effectively coordinated with European allies through synchronized expulsions and the continued rollover of sanctions related to Russia's ongoing aggression against Ukraine. Our actions are having an impact. Research by the State Department's Office of the Chief Economist shows that on average, sanctioned Russian firms see their operating revenue fall by a quarter, their total asset valuation fall by half, and are forced to fire a third of their employees. We believe our sanctions cumulatively have cost the Russian government tens of billions of dollars on top of the broader impact on state-owned sectors and the chilling effect of US sanctions on the Russian economy. Following the announcement of sanctions in April, the Russian company Rusal lost about 50% of its market value. In the 5 days following our August 8 announcement of Chemical and Biological Weapons Act sanctions, the ruble depreciated to its lowest level against the dollar in 2 years. Even as we have imposed unprecedented penalties for Russian aggression, we have been clear that the door to dialogue is open. Should Putin choose to take credible steps towards a constructive path. In Syria, we created de-escalation channels to avoid collisions between our forces. In Ukraine, we have maintained an effort under Ambassador Kurt Volker to provide the means by which Russia can live up to its commitments under the Minsk agreements. But in all of these areas, it is up to Russia, not America, to take the next step. Our policy remains unchanged, steady cost imposition until Russia changes course. This is a statement of A. Well Mitchell, Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee U.S. Strategy towards the Russian Federation, given on Tuesday, August 21st, 2018. Even as we have imposed unprecedented penalties for Russian aggression, we have been clear that the door to dialogue is open. As with the overall strategy, the premise of these efforts has been that our diplomacy is most effective when backed by positions of strength, he says. We have placed particular emphasis on bolstering the states of frontline Europe and that are most susceptible to Russian geopolitical pressure. In Ukraine and Georgia, we lifted the previous administration's restrictions on the acquisition of defensive weapons for resisting Russian territorial aggression. In the Balkans, American diplomacy has played a lead role in resolving the Greece-Macedonia name dispute and is engaging with Serbia and Kosovo to propel the EU-led dialogue. Let me read this to you again. In the Balkans, says A. Wess Mitchell, Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs, in the Balkans, American diplomacy has played a lead role in resolving the Greece-Macedonian name dispute and is engaging with Serbia and Kosovo to propel the EU-led dialogue. In the Caucasus, Black Sea region, and Central Europe, we are working to close the vacuums that invite Russian penetration by promoting energy diversification, fighting corruption, and competing for hearts and minds in the lead up to the 30th anniversary of the end of communism. Our strategy is animated by the realization that the threat from Russia has evolved beyond being simply an external or military one. It includes unprecedentedly brazen influence operations orchestrated by the Kremlin on the soil of our allies and even here at home in the United States. These activities are, as FBI Director Wray recently stated, quotation, wide and deep, end of quotation, being both extensively resourced and directed from the highest levels of the Russian state. We work closely with the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, and the National Security Council to ensure that all relevant resources are being brought to bear to thwart and punish any Russian influence campaigns in the run-up to the elections. It's important to state clearly that these campaigns are and are not about. What they're not about is any particular attachment to specific US domestic political causes. They are not about right or left or American political philosophy. The threat from Russian influence operations existed long before our 2016 presidential election and will continue long after this election cycle or the next or the next. As the recent Facebook purges reveal, the Russian state has promoted fringe voices on the political left, not just the right, including groups who advocate violence, the storming of federal buildings, and the overthrow of the US government. Russia foments and funds controversial causes and then foments and funds the causes opposed to those causes. Putin's thesis is that the American Constitution is an experiment that will fail if challenged in the right way from within. Putin wants to break apart the American Republic, not by influencing an election or two, but by systematically inflaming the perceived fault lines that exist within our society. His is a strategy of chaos or strategic effect. Accepting this fact is absolutely essential for developing a long-term comprehensive response to the problem. The most dangerous thing we could do is to politicize the challenge, which in itself would be a gift to Putin. What Russian efforts are about is geopolitics, the Putinist system's permanent and self-justifying struggle for international dominance. As stated by a handbook of the Russian armed forces, the goal is, quotation, to carry out mass psychological campaigns against the population of a state in order to destabilize society and the government, as well as forcing a state to make decisions in the interests of their opponents. End of quote. Doing so involves an evolved toolkit of subversive statecraft, first employed by the Bolshevik and later the Soviet state, which has been upgraded for the digital age. While these tools and technologies differ depending on the context, the key to their success is that the Kremlin employs them within a common strategic and operational framework aimed at leveraging all available means to achieve a decisive strategic effect. The State Department takes this threat very seriously. From my first day on the job, I have established for our team that countering this threat in both its overt and covert forms will be among the highest priorities for the Bureau of European and Eurasian Affairs. As a co-chair of the Russia Influence Group, I work with General Scaparotti to bring the combined resources of the EUR and EUCOM to bear against this problem. Under EUR's leadership, all 50 US missions located in Europe and Eurasia are required to develop, coordinate, and execute tailored action plans for rebuffing Russian influence operations in their host countries. Within the Bureau, we recruited one of the architects of the Global Engagement Center legislation from the staff of a member of this committee. In addition, we formed a new position, the Senior Advisor for Russian Malign Activities and Trends, or SARMAT, to develop cross-regional strategies across the offices. Early this year, EUR created a dedicated team within the Bureau to take the offensive and publicly expose Russian malign activities, which since January of this year has called out the Kremlin on 112 occasions. Together with the GEC, EUR is now working with our close ally, the UK. The United Kingdom, to form an international coalition for coordinating efforts in this field. The State Department requested over $380 million in security and economic assistance accounts in the President's 2019 budget for Europe and Eurasia that can be allocated toward combating Russian malign influence. In these efforts, we recognize that Congress has an important role to play in providing the tools and resources that will be needed to deal effectively with the combined Russian problem set. As Secretary Pompeo made clear in his recent testimony, we are committed to working with all of you to make headway against this problem and align our efforts in support of the President's Russia strategy. Mr. Chairman, thank you again for inviting me to speak today. I welcome your comments. This was a statement given before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, U.S. Strategy towards the Russian Federation, by A. Wess Mitchell. A. Wess is W-E-S-S. Mitchell is M-I-T-C-H-E-L-L. Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs on Tuesday, August the 21st, 2018. There we go. 3 articles. I hope you will be able to decide for yourself what you think about all these statements, all these articles that have been published by various sources in the year of 2018. You've been listening to In Focus with Silvana Pavlovska from Melbourne, Australia. Thank you so much for joining me on this day. I'm looking forward to seeing you again very soon. And I bid you farewell with this beautiful intro.